You're watching the Livewell, brought to you by Rapala.
Bassmaster Elite Series 2022 is underway like so many years past. We start in the state of Florida with 2 tournaments this time around. So if you didn't, Ronnie Moore, do very well. You didn't live up to your own expectations there at the St. Johns River. You got one more shot at Florida, and it's a much celebrated fishery, the Harris Chain.
It is. The Harris Chain, to be honest, Tommy, we've got a lot of legendary bass lakes in the state of Florida. And over the last decade, 0 Bassmaster Elite Series events at the Harris Chain. We've had our St. Croix Opens, our Strike King College Series, a lot of those events, and we've got a sample of it. And it's really shown the potential. Now we get to go to the Elite Series. Now we get to see 4 days, and we're coming off the College Series that was there just a few weeks ago. 61 pounds and change. The record for a 2-day event. They caught 36 for a single day.
On
the biggest single-day bag in college history.
We should name check these guys, Lake and Matt Messer, Kentucky Christian University.
They blew it out of the water, and even second place, Emmanuel College, they had over 60 pounds. Imagine catching 30 pounds a day and losing by a pound. That's what the Harris Chain brings, and it's very cool fishery. It's got 8 different bodies of water that these anglers can fish in. We take off from Lake Harris. Little Lake Harris is right nearby. You go through the Dead River to Eustis. You can lock to the west to Griffin. You can go over to Dora through the canals, and then Beauclair, obviously Carlton, and then you get all the way down to Apopka if you really want to just leave everyone in the dust and go away. But Harris Chain, a lot of body of water to play with.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you just added up the lakes by themselves together, it wouldn't be that much bigger than your average elite venue. But you're right. You're adding miles of canals, river miles as well. Yep. Idling. In fact, the last time it was won in the Elite Series, Rhoda, that it was won in a little bitty pond off of one of those canals in a place fished for 4 days that was no bigger than a high school gymnasium.
That's what's cool, is if you can find a group of fish to yourself with the changing weather in Florida, whether it's getting colder and fish are staying put, or it's getting warmer and fish are coming to you, you can maximize some of that. And one thing that's also interesting is because they've had such a cold winter for January goes and early parts of February, the grass may die off and grow back differently. It's not always in the same place. Like Seth Feider said years ago, when you go to a lake that has rocks, those rocks don't move. But when you go to grass fisheries, that grass changes. So the eelgrass offshore in Eustis and Griffin will always change, and you can find a little something to yourself and kind of get away from the field. But it's a very dynamic place. I always enjoy Leesburg when we go.
It will be so much fun to watch these guys turned loose, full force, especially the first 2 days of fishing there, because it is one of those bodies of water, kind of like Lake Guntersville, it just takes that pressure year in and year out. Come this time of year, it still kicks out the giants.
It does kick them out indeed, and you can catch them a lot of different ways. What's crazy is the Carolina rig is something that we don't necessarily talk about in Florida, but at the Harris Chain, it might be one of the top 5 lakes in the nation for that technique. Obviously, the guys in the College Series showed that off as well, but when we get into some of the techniques we could see play, obviously we'll always see some kind of bedfish or shallow flipping deal go on with soft plastics, maybe big jigs as well, Tokyo rigs, things like that. But if you get off on those offshore shell bars, I could see a Storm Arashi vibe playing, some lipless bait that you can cover water, maybe above the grass, or maybe, like I said, on shell bars, some of that harder structure. And then also, I think we got a little bit of taste of it in other events with crankbaits in Florida. I think the OG Slim, about a 4 to 6 foot diver, depending on what line size you put on there. I think going across some of the tops of the grass or some of the hard structure, that could be a way to go. So normally you don't go to Florida and think about treble hooked baits doing well, maybe other than maybe top waters, but I think some mid-depth baits could get a lot of bites. Now we'll see if the spawning fish pull up at the Harris Chain and you have to catch the giants another way.
All right, speaking of catching giants, who have you got your eyes on, especially as we start on day number 1?
I think you have to go, at least some of the guys who find bedfish, the guys who love to sight fish, the guys who have really good eyes, a Hunter Shryock, somebody like that who I've seen in the opens catch plenty of sight fish and bedfish. He's done well at the Harris Chain before. I think if you have a couple big sight fish in practice and you can get there day 1 first, you can have 15 to 17 pounds in 3 fish very quickly. We should see upper 20s. I think a Brandon Lester also could do well. He's patient. He loves the Carolina rig. He loves soft plastics offshore. I think that's one. And then he also, man, he has a great track record in Florida, and that's hard to do if you're not from Florida.
Being able to run away and be left alone, how important is that on the Harris Chain?
I think it is important, especially if a lot of those community holes, a lot of those places that normally get pressure, get a bunch of pressure. But we got to think, the guys who maybe stay close, they'll let the field run away away from them. And if you know what I'm saying, the Venetian Gardens right there, Leesburg, if those guys who stay in Harris or in Little Harris, there have been plenty of giant bass released in Lake Harris from the tournaments and just local tournaments, regional tournaments, national tournaments, all released right there in that general region. They take them away from takeoff, but not too far. They kind of get relocated, and maybe Lake Harris and Little Lake Harris gets to shine because it's gotten repopulated with some giants.
Been a long time since we've been there. We don't remember everything about it, but one thing we do remember, it's always entertaining when we go to the Harris chain, February 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, the SiteOne Bassmaster Elite Series, stop number 2 for 2022.